But there was one other really big piece of wargaming news in the last week that came out that I think a lot of people never thought they would see, and that is the folks over at Battlefront have announced that they're coming to Steam, which that by itself was a shocker. They, for many years, have said that is not something they're considering, and even at times people took that to mean ever. But it looks like the folks over at Battlefront are coming to Steam, and they're partnering with someone. So they're historically they've always been, or I think they've actually worked with a couple other developers. I thought I saw a post saying they worked with Paradox at one point, but apparently they're partnering with Slytherin to publish Combat Mission Shock Force 2 on Steam on August 25th. So that's pretty freaking big news.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of shocked by that because Battlefront was always kind of like doing their own thing, and then all of a sudden, like they're partnering with Slytherin, which I think is it's an incredible partnership. I think it's historic because finally it brings, I'm not trying to say anything about Battlefront, but I feel like it brings them out of the shadows because, I always go to battlefront.com, but they're rarely ever in like gaming news. Like if you go to wargamer.com or anything like that, I rarely see them on those kind of things, and they're not on Steam, so I never see them their games suggested. So once in a blue, I'll go to battlefront.com. It's like, oh, they came out with this new game. Let me download it. But now that they're on Steam and partnered with Slytherin, I'm hoping to see their name more often.
Well, and they did say in some of their forums anyway that this is the first, but they expect more games to come to Steam, which I think is, obviously they're going to test this out and see how it goes. And if it goes well, then, I would expect to see the catalog migrated over. At least initially, it's just going to be Shock Force 2. I used to play a lot of Battlefront games. I even played the original Strategic Command. They used to be the developer behind the original Strategic Command games. And then they sold the rights to Slytherin. So I thought that was interesting, or to Fury Software, who then went with Slytherin. But yeah, I played the original 3, Africa Corps, Combat Mission, Barbarossa to Berlin, and then Beyond Overlord. I went in reverse order. But I haven't played a lot of their newer stuff. I did play the original Shock Force, which I think Shock Force 2 is just a modernized version of that. But I know they've had a bunch of other games out. I'm really excited because I know on Developer Dialogue we're going to be getting a chance to hopefully talk to them. And I'm really curious to hear about hear about them and talk to one of the developers over there. But I think this is big news. I hope this has this definitely has the potential to be huge for them. So and I'm excited to hear they're already talking about potentially bringing more of their catalog. I'm really curious, by the way. So I was reading a post by the administrator of Battlefront and their forums, which almost made it sound to me like they're really interested in the professional side of gaming. They were talking about like professional wargaming with, I'm assuming like, like Command Pro, where they work with different governments to do war game simulations. I wonder how much Matrix and Slytherin's like success with Command Modern Operations Pro might have influenced this partnership. Because I think it was, they said it. And I thought, if they're bringing up this professional side of things, that's interesting to say the least. They said commercial possibilities. They're talking about the relationship with them in the past. They said, we're pretty excited about the expanded relationship with Slytherin. We've been talking with them for this for about 4 years, something like that. Commercial possibilities were kicked around in parallel with our military contract agreement discussions, but we wanted to work with them for a bit on the military side before committing to commercial stuff. So, I wonder how much of this, expanded relationship of Slytherin into the professional side of things might bring other commercial opportunities. Who knows? Maybe Steel Beast Pro or other commercial simulators might see a benefit in working with Slytherin to bring some of these types of simulations to commercial audiences.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is this is big news. So I'm hoping that it works very well. I hope I hope this explodes and more games come to the library. One thing that I really didn't like is when I purchased Combat Mission, games, I would always lose the executable file, right? And I know you can re-download from the websites, but I think you only get a certain limited amount of times that you can re-download it. But I love having all my games in like my Steam catalog, and whenever I, launch a new, virtual machine or, a new OS or something like that, I'll go in and I'll select a whole bunch of games on my Steam catalog. And it's not until I go into, this, a file on my computer and say, oh, that's right, I have Combat Mission this game. And I don't play it as often because I don't see it as often. When it's in my Steam library, I usually go up and down my Steam library. It's like, oh, I'm in the mood for this. I would love for Combat Mission to be in part of my Steam library. And now that it is, it's going to be awesome because I'll be playing it more because I see it more.
Yeah, I think it'll just be easier to keep track. Like like I said, I played the original Combat Mission games, and I kind of lost track with them. Unless, to your point, unless you go to their website and you follow them more actively, it's hard to stay up to date. And so I think if they're there on Steam and if they're working with Slytherin, like another major war game publisher, I think it'll be a lot easier for them to make sure that people don't just fall away, out of sheer inertia or just losing track of a developer. If you're a big fan, you'll probably go to the forums and whatnot, but I'm sure a lot of people don't. So this has the potential to be really, really big for them. And there have been a lot of developers in the last 2-3 years or so, maybe it's been a little bit longer than that, that have long avoided Steam, that have come around to publishing on Steam. The Out of the Park development folks, the guys who make Out of the Park Baseball, for like 15 years they didn't go to Steam. Then eventually they went to Steam, and now I think they're probably doing better than they ever have before. They went from being like this, incredibly detailed baseball management game with no official license or tie to Major League Baseball. Now they're like one of the few games that has an actual MLB license. So obviously they seem to be doing well there. Major League Baseball, some organizations like minor league teams actually use the product to like actually simulate things, almost like a Command Pro type scenario. Obviously Slytherin, for a really long time, people were begging them to come to Steam. Eventually they did, and obviously they've stuck around on Steam, so it seems like they've seen success there as well. There's a lot of developers that I think are in that spot. Didn't IL-2 just recently come to Steam? After years of being kind of off on their own, IL-2, the Great Battles of Stalingrad or whatnot. For a long time, they weren't on Steam. I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tortuga.
I don't know actually when they went to Steam. They
think
originally,
it was recent.
you still see a pretty heavy. They're a bit of a parallel to Battlefront in that sense that they don't like the Steam stuff. They still try to get you, if you can, and no sense not to, by the way. They still try to get you to buy their packages from the website itself, not from Steam, because obviously Steam takes a cut. I think that's the biggest news about this. That Slytherin is going to go ahead and take the Battlefront to Steam, where it's an underplayed game. I think that Battlefront has been kind of the same way the Rule of the Waves has been okay for their own reasons, keeping their game, I don't want to say cloistered, but not as widespread as it probably could be because they had full control over everything. So having Slytherin take over and pushing the product onto Steam, I hope that they have a good payoff for this, because I think that this is a game which has been underplayed. I mean, I've always seen it, but I never wanted to get into the whole mess of crossing over to the forum and all that. And for some reason, I have never gotten into combat missions, and I think part of my hesitance has been just I've heard things about needing to deal with the forum there and everything, which is probably not true. It's just this ugly rumor, or this ugly... it's like an ugly rumor about Battlefront, that they're that they're this cloistered forum community, and it's hard to, interface with them easily.
Well, hopefully it's successful. I mean, there's definitely other games that are super groggy that are on Steam. And my experience with Combat Mission was always that it was easier to approach than something like Graviteam. But Graviteam is very, very detailed in a similar type of a game, and that's on Steam, and they seem to be doing well. So, I think that was, that's the big news, and I know I'm really excited, and I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to talk to them on the upcoming developer dialogue podcast episode, and hearing about their games and their plans, and maybe a little bit about this. We'll see how much they can talk about or how much they're willing to talk about. But I'm really excited to talk to them because Combat Mission Beyond Overlord, which was the first Combat Mission game, I think was pretty transformative in the wargaming space. And I played the hell out of it. And I remember when it came out, and I remember downloading the demo, and I remember that was one of the early war games that I played a ton of. But I fell away from this series over time, and I think part of it is just because they weren't center of mind. They weren't present. And so I'm excited to see what comes of this partnership.